Hello, everybody. Christina Previtt here. I am lead faculty for clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. I am also one of the 2 lead faculty for modern management of the older adult. We have 3 courses that focus on all things Jerry PT. I know many of you are thinking, what is going on? Because usually Thursday is Leadership Thursday, but all the fitness athlete faculty have been so excited to bring you fitness related content that we just couldn't fit it all in. And so Jeff let me take over the mic on Thursday to talk about something that has been coming up a lot in the pregnancy and postpartum course, and is something that I think is a really important consideration when we're working with male and female athletes who are really getting competitive, and body image may be an important consideration or something that they deem as an important consideration for their sport. So first I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what relative energy deficiency syndrome, REDS, in sport is. And then we're going to go a little bit into some of the definitions, why this is important for PT, and just give you guys a little bit of some of the anecdotal stories that we are seeing in regards to how this could be something really challenging or how it could be impacting your clients. And so the definition of REDS actually is an extension and an expansion on female athlete triad. When I was going to school, female athlete triad was the main construct that we spoke about. And female athlete triad was talking about 3 different pillars. So there was low energy availability, issues with menstruation, and issues with bone health. And those were the 3 pillars that led to a diagnosis of female athlete triad. What we realized, or what researchers who are a lot smarter than me realized, was that that wasn't a very inclusive definition. And that although those are definitely issues that are happening in REDS, it really doesn't encapsulate the whole picture of what can be happening. And individuals can still be menstruating, for example, and so therefore may not have that one pillar of female athlete triad, but still can definitely be in a state of energy deficiency leading to other cascades of negative impacts on their performance and personal health that is really important for clinicians to be categorizing. The second reason why female athlete triad was taken and changed to REDS was that what we know now, even though the research is still young, is that this can affect men as well. And therefore, if we're having an inclusive definition, then we have to be considering that with men, menstruation isn't going to be the primary suppression in the hormonal axis. It's going to be a reduction in testosterone secretion that's going to be leading to negative or adverse health events. And so the definition of REDS is impaired physiological functioning caused by relative energy deficiency. It includes, but is not limited to, impairment in metabolic rate, menstrual function for women, bone health, immunity, protein synthesis, and cardiovascular health. And this is going to be really important. The prevalence of REDS is estimated, again, this is going to be huge estimates, between 2% of athletes in sport to 60% for male and female clients, depending on the sport. So what we know is that individuals are more at risk for developing REDS the further along they are going in regards to their athletic career, and the more that body composition and body weight is going to be a driver of performance in some way. And so we know, for example, in dancers, where the culture around sport is around leanness and lightness for a lot of their movements. In weightlifting, it is a weight class sport. So on the day of my competition, 2 hours before, I need to get on a scale and show my weight so that I can compete in the class that I had signed up for. Same is true for things like wrestling. We see really extreme dieting that happens with individuals who are doing wrestling competitions, male and female, again, because it's a weight class sport and their performance is relative to their weight class. And therefore, it's going to be a lot of these athletes who will feel the external and internal pressures to maintain a certain body composition and a certain weight, and that can lead to different dieting tactics, which could potentially have long-term health implications. And although this isn't necessarily something that is talked about in CrossFit, and there hasn't been any research that's been done because it isn't a weight class sport, I am fairly certain that there are quite a few female and male CrossFit athletes who may actually be in this state of relative energy deficiency. And it's going to be important because we know that it has implications for our physiotherapy treatment. Okay, so what we know is that in terms of outcomes, performance outcomes, if individuals are experiencing low energy availability, which is a definition of equal to or less than 30 calories per kilo of fat-free mass, which is really low numbers, that it's going to lead to a host of different complications. And one of the biggest ones that gets talked about is a lack of menstruation, or oligoamenorrhea, which is missing 3 or more menstrual cycles in the last 6 months. Some of the issues that I'm seeing with this is that the methods of contraception that are becoming more popular with my female CrossFit athletes, my female weightlifting athletes, are essentially eliminating menstruation altogether. And so women oftentimes will go and, for example, on birth control pills, they'll skip the last week and they'll go 3 months without menstruating, or they'll have an IUD placed in, which essentially ceases menstruation until it's removed. And the issue potentially with that is that we may not know, especially if we're using the menstruation status as a defining characteristic for relative energy deficiency, we won't know if there's any hormonal changes that are going on because of the way that the athlete's nutrition is being handled, either by themselves or by their coach. And so using that as the only pillar is going to be really challenging. And so what the British Journal of Sports Medicine has done is they've created a really wonderful tool that talks about relative energy deficiency. It talks about the systems that are affected, and then it gives this traffic light for athletes that you may be worried that would be developing energy deficiency. What are the next steps for you as a clinician who could be flagging these individuals? And this is something that can be associated with disordered eating. So it can be associated with something like anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa, but it doesn't necessarily have to. And so as much as you're looking out for the disordered eating, you are looking for some of the negative sequelae of REDS that could be indicative of some sort of issue with their metabolism or their hormone levels. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that I am asking this question in my athletes younger and younger. I've had 9 and 10-year-old athletes who are healthy and beautiful and going through and being active athletes who have disclosed to me that their friends are no longer eating at school because they feel like they need to diet at 10 years old, that they themselves have gone on a diet, that they have been having issues with their body image. And so this is happening younger and younger, and these young athletes are taking it into their own hands. Sometimes their parents aren't even aware because they'll bring a lunch to school, they will throw that lunch away, and their parents won't know that they haven't been eating it, or they'll give it away to other friends so that their parents think that they are eating food. And therefore, when I am working with an athlete who is younger, if I can get the consent from the parent, I ask them to leave the room as I'm asking about some of these questions, because I think it's really important because these athletes may feel more comfortable speaking with you than potentially speaking with a parent where they feel like they may be getting in trouble. And then as some of my youth athletes get a little bit older, you're seeing this where they feel like they're dieting and it could be creating potential change in menstruation pattern, or it may be a delayed onset of menstruation. And we're seeing that in athletes like gymnasts who may not begin menstruating until well into high school or well until their gymnastics career is over, because they were not maintaining the body fat percentage required in order for those menstrual periods to be going on. And the reason why we have that amenorrhea happening is because menstruating is energy expensive relatively, and so our body is trying to conserve energy by ceasing some of those reproductive system functions in order to prevent, because again, pregnancy, which is the reason why we're menstruating in general, is also energy intensive. And if your body isn't strong enough from an energy availability perspective to create a viable pregnancy, then your body is going to cease that function. And so again, really, really important to be asking your youth athletes. And it's something that I think is more common in a CrossFit box, especially in some of our higher level athletes than we may think. And so even if they say that they're eating well, what are some of the things that might come up that you would probably want to refer back and talk a little bit more about nutrition? When individuals are in an established state of REDS, they're going to experience an issue with recovery. So it's going to feel like they're having decreased muscle strength, even though their training volume has remained the same. They could have decreased endurance performance. Their injury risk is higher. So if they keep getting hurt over and over and over again, their response to training is going to be blunted because they don't have the necessary fueling in order to be responding to that training and getting stronger. It can affect them cognitively, so they may have impaired judgment. They could have a decreased level of coordination. They could have decreased concentration, so they're not able to stay on one task. It can lead to irritability, depression, and things like decreased glycogen stores, so their energy availability in their CrossFit workouts may be decreasing. And so those are things that you may be potentially coming on in the back of your mind. If this athlete, you've been working with them for a little while, they're really good with their exercise program, but their body is just not getting better, it may be something that you'll want to probe a little bit further into their diet strategies and potentially refer to a registered dietitian, a psychologist, or into working with their primary care physician. And then, so if you are flagging that individual, you're going to refer. And then they have this traffic light that is looking at if you have a male or female athlete who is experiencing disordered eating or is not, and is having issues with energy availability, what are the things that you should do? And so the red, in terms of their return to sport. So the red light, which is no start, you're not going, they're high risk for potential issues, is individuals who are presenting with relative energy deficiency in sport, but they are also presenting with disordered eating. So it could be anorexia nervosa or other serious medical condition. They have used extreme weight loss techniques that could potentially be life-threatening. Another area that's fairly common for you to potentially see this is these extreme losses of weight for individuals in powerlifting, especially with a 24-hour weigh-in. You can see individuals who are fluctuating between 20 to 25 pounds and using IVs to rehydrate their bodies to try and get back to performance, which has led them potentially on the platform to, example, I've seen athletes pass out because they're so dehydrated and they're trying to their electrolyte balance has gone all off because they lost such an extreme amount of weight. They're trying to get it back really quickly. And so technically that is considered a red light in regards to having them compete in sport because of the potential issues that can be happening. And it can lead to potentially severe ECG abnormalities like bradycardia, which can cause athletes to pass out. Yellow light, so caution, is a prolonged abnormally low body fat percentage as measured by DEXA or anthropometry of any time. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. I always get that word messed up, try and say that 10 times fast. And a substantial body weight loss of more than 5 to 10% of body mass in the last month. And then if you're looking with those yellow lights are to try and really, if you're having an athlete who's dealing with REDS, the recommendation is generally to really reduce your level of physical activity in order for, one, your body fat percentage largely to go up, for your hormonal profile to re-regulate, because again, REDs can be linked to low level cortisol levels, and therefore you want to, and exercise can increase your cortisol, although transiently. And so the general recommendation is to really bring down your intensity so that you can get your body back to menstruating. If you have the athlete who is not doing well increasing their caloric intake and are either trying to increase their caloric intake but also increase their level of physical activity to balance it out so that their body fat percentage remains the same, this is where you're in those yellow lights, where the clearance to go back to sport is going to be different and more complicated and longer than probably the athlete is going to want. And then the green light go ahead is when the relationship that the athlete has had with food, the energy availability that they have presented in regards to change in diet, has gotten back to a more healthy level, and you're able to slowly reintroduce a lot of those movements. And so I will post a link to the Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport Clinical Assessment Tool in the comments for this post. But I think it's really important for us to be considering that we often think about female athlete triad in terms of lack of menstruation. In a lot of CrossFit athletes who have things like IUDs in place, they're not menstruating at all. And so they may actually be having issues with their hormone profile that are being masked by their birth control methods. And therefore we don't really know that they're having issues with their body and their hormone regulation. And so it's going to be an important thing for us to be trying to screen, especially if these athletes are getting hurt a lot, if they're talking about inability to handle stress, all these types of things. In male athletes, it's more commonly seen in regards to endurance level sport. So chronic workload in regards to the amount of mileage, if their body isn't recovering from that, or they're not eating enough, because a lot of endurance level athletes are going to want to keep their body fat low so that they can run quicker. This can translate into male athlete triad, which is underneath the umbrella of relative energy deficiency in sport. And their link is around reduction in testosterone levels, which is causing issues and impairments with recovery, and also leading to things like sexual dysfunction in regards to reductions in libido. And so all these kind of things are going to come into play. And as physical therapists who have touch points with these athletes, a lot of clinicians that listen to this podcast are also PTs who work out in different CrossFit gyms or have their offices in CrossFit gyms. You may be the ones who have enough of a relationship with that athlete to be able to speak to them about potentially some of these things that are going on. And it's something that can actually affect a woman's fertility, because if you're not menstruating, that means you're not ovulating. And so some of these athletes could potentially have issues if they're trying to conceive. And then again, you're trying to work through some of these issues with their hormone profile or they're trying to work through issues with their hormone profile with their physicians. And it's something that nutrition can be a really important component, and we can be the ones to flag it. So I hope you guys found that helpful. This is always kind of on my radar when I'm working with athletes, male and female. I would probably say that I've flagged it more and put a referral back to a primary care physician more often with female athletes than male. That does not mean that it doesn't happen in both genders. And it's definitely something that I'm very open talking about with my CrossFitters, weightlifters, powerlifters, youth athletes in regards to energy availability. If I have an athlete who is working with a nutrition coach and they are not asking about their menstruation, I tell them to flag that to their coach. Again, because if you're in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, it can definitely wreak havoc with some of your sex hormones, which are really important for recovery and other aspects of just healthy physiological and physical function. And so when I was working with a nutrition coach, he asked me every single time if there was any changes to my menstruation that he wanted to know. And I thought that that was something that was a good check mark for me in regards to his level of understanding around how important it is to have some of those checkpoints. Alrighty, that is it for today. Thank you for letting me switch Leadership Thursday to Fitness Athlete Thursday. Tomorrow, Mitch is going to be on for Fitness Athlete Friday, so you're getting all the fitness content all this week. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys have any other questions or comments, please feel free to comment underneath. We have our next cohort of clinical management of the fitness athlete pregnancy and postpartum, where we talk about this actually in some amount of detail It is starting mid-May, May 18th. And so if you're looking to jump into that cohort, I encourage you guys to do so. Otherwise, I will see you guys in a couple of weeks for me switching hats and getting into Jerry on ice. Have a great day, guys.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.